Oh, it just,
Bye.
yeah, but
Been real.
I think, I'm really sad to see him go. I don't know, I enjoyed his
I always think about
his quick
college
fitness.
girls, if I ever come back down to work, being
I mean,
a
this is terrible.
lifeguard or supervised program or
You
working
really
as
don't
a
need this information.
checkout lady, it's all about physically detailed.
That's right.
It's cool.
We'll come to order. This is the Washington Area Highway Transportation Committee meeting. It is Monday, June 24th, 2019. Give the call to, or give us the roll call.
Craig Miller,
Here.
Ed Fisher, Judy Wagner, Ray Frankenberg,
Here.
Bob Ingeman,
Here.
Bill Stratman.
Here.
Sandy Lucy,
Yes.
Joe Holtmeyer.
Here.
Danny Cassette, Elby Eckelkamp,
Here.
Bill Miller,
Here.
Tim Brinker, Steve Sullentrop.
Here.
John Hilgis.
Here.
Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, all.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Judy's on vacation, and she mentioned that the last time, at our last meeting. We've got Craig Miller joining us this morning, and he'll be with us
Welcome,
on
Craig.
the committee.
Thank you.
Great, welcome. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to review them. Any changes, corrections? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. First item, the Amtrak, and Mark's not here. Is Mark going to continue to be on our?
He's not, because Craig is his
I know
replacement.
Craig is his replacement. but-
We were just
Right.
discussing that. I actually ran into Mark at the barber shop, and he had told me he had been doing that. I think he told me something about going to quarterly meetings. They were out of town, Jeff City or.
Yeah.
So I'll get with him and talk to him about maybe continuing that. But
Well, I think it's a good, we've always had a good presence with Amtrak, and I think it shows. We've got one of the most active spots in Missouri, and it's good to keep up with it. And Mark had a lot of personal relationships with these people, and I think that should continue. So great if you can do it.
Okay.
Anybody have anything about Amtrak you want to bring up, talk about?
Bill, do you want to introduce the new Mark Wessels?
Just did,
We
just did.
Must not have been here.
Oh, yeah. No, I just.
My name's Craig Miller.
Craig Miller, I'm sorry.
From the chamber? Yeah.
Steve Saltrip.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Highway 47 Missouri River Bridge. Without Judy here, we're basically, you know,
I give you somewhat of an update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Flooded.
work has essentially been stalled out. The river needs to recede down to 20-foot gauge height here in Washington. Obviously, it's been fluctuating a little bit. It is going to rise most likely 27.5, 28 towards the middle of the week. So there's not a lot of work that can be done. We're working with the subcontractor on the lighting right now to get the lighting kind of squared away. They do have to place the pier lighting. That has not been done yet, but we can't do much work there until the river goes down. They're working on getting us some renderings as far as what's it going to look like, what are the capabilities of the system. I've asked for kind of like a menu, for lack of better terms, because kind of the sky's the limit as far as what we want this lighting to look like. I know we've seen a rendering of the pier lighting going up and kind of fading out to the actual girders themselves. That's what the renderings have always showed. That's kind of what we discussed as being the base. Like that's the minimum we have to have. But there's also 5 other different options that we can do. One would be like a slow wave. There's some other different things. You could kind of the sky's the limit on how we do these. That concerns me a little bit because obviously if the sky's the limit, there's a lot of options. It's hard to come to a consensus. So we're wanting to get that base, come up with a menu, for lack of better terms, and then kind of present that to see if that's what council and everybody else would want to see.
how does it fit into the budget? I mean, that's got to be the key item.
So the actual programming of the lighting is in the contract, so that doesn't change what we do. There is a control box that's kind of midway on the bridge it's a locked control box that allows the city to go out there and modify that lighting, quite honestly, whenever we need to. Now, how does that get done working with the Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers, all those things? I don't know. but the system has the capabilities to do so. MoDOT has relinquished all lighting rights essentially to the city, so those are our lights. And it's important to know that, because moving forward, if there's a light that's out, a light that gets
Yeah.
mud on it, a light that does this, a light that does that, those calls come to the city, and we are the ones responsible to fix that. From here, once it goes live, moving forward. So I made Darren aware of that, because quite honestly, I wasn't in negotiations of that, and I don't believe he was either. But we just need to understand that we're gonna start budgeting some dollars. How many dollars? I'm thinking maybe 5 to 10% of the overall construction potentially. The lighting system has a 3-year warranty, not construction of the bridge, construction of the lighting component. The lighting, I believe, does have a 3-year warranty on it. So after 3 years, it's ours. So that's walkway lighting, pier lighting, any of those things.
Are you going to be able to program these lights to change colors and do
There is
different-
no color change. It is white light only. But what you have the capability of is the dimming and the kind of the effect that you see. So like I said, the pier lighting goes up, fades out into the girders. That's what we've seen on every
I thought
single
the
rendering.
pier lighting was coming down.
Or down, or the piers will be
installed,
lighted
so
at
we know.
maximum, and then it fades out to girder, to the middle of the girders. So
Yeah.
down, up,
Okay.
I don't know where every light sits. But there's different zones on the bridge. So each LED set is a zone, there's a zone, and you can modify those zones as much as you want, really. So,
Who's going to get the training on that? You?
no. It would have to be, IT would be the ones to do it, because they would have the program on our computer system to take care of that.
Okay.
So, and what we need to set really is come up with kind of a process or a policy. It doesn't necessarily have to be just kind of an internal policy of how we take those requests if there was ever a change. So for example, they've always said that if there was a 4th of July, when we're shooting fireworks off, you can have those lights kind of have that effect of a firework. That concerns me a lot. I think it would concern all of us a little bit of
Well,
being
for
able to have
what
that
it's worth,
capability.
when we were deciding lighting on the committee,
Uh-huh.
they were going to be lights with no movement,
Beautiful. So that's
and
in
they were going
place.
to be washes on the piers that were going to shine down, and, those piers have that raised Gothic cathedral, there's that raised part, and part of the reasons we went with that was because when the light shined on that, that would give some dimension with, that was all kind of connected. And there never really was, that I remember, any discussion. Maybe there was the option that we could, but we always just thought it was going to be light.
And that's, yeah, so we,
Anybody else on that committee?
But I think what he's saying is the management of those lights.
Yeah.
Yes.
In other words,
Right.
the bid package is set, what we're gonna get is set, the hardware and software is set. Now, you can do tons of stuff with the software.
But we never,
And so, yeah, but that's
Anticipated
the
that.
difference.
how do we actually get it internally? How do we actually, if there was a change, for example, rather than that base or that, what you see every single day, what is that process? Because we are going to have essentially 6 different effects programmed into the system. So all it would really take is someone to go out there, plug into the system, lockbox, security, all that stuff, if we wanted to change it, just understanding that we can do that. But it's ours to control, and really just budgeting moving forward. My big concern here, honestly, is that, let's say that one of the circuit boards, because LEDs are essentially circuit boards, they're not bulbs, but one of the circuit boards goes out on some of the pier lighting, and now, pier, one of the middle ones is out. So obviously, the city gets the call, because there are lights, we then have to get permits, all these things, that pier light may be out for some time, because to mobilize, it's not us going out with a bucket truck fixing it. It's a much different situation.
Where's the control?
Now, the
panel?
clearance lighting that's required by law with the DNR, with the Corps of Engineers,
Correct.
with clearances for MoDOT, that's all going to be maintained by the Highway Department, right? It's there
I
for
don't
it.
know that detail. I do know that the walkway
I
lighting,
would want that liability placed on the highway to maintain the safety of the highway and not on the city.
I totally would agree with that, and I'd have to look into whatever that, I've always seen is what the job special provisions within the contract and it does transfer the lighting. But I think what it comes out, it's the decorative lighting is what you
Yeah, and I would imagine
not the
that
bare
that safety
minimum.
lighting is a different package from the lighting that got given
I
to
would
the
ag-
city.
Before
I can't
before
be
the
sure of
Lions
that.
Club put lights on the old bridge, there wasn't any lights on the bridge.
I don't know what that agreement looked like. So whether the Lions, I'm sure, hopefully the Lions Club didn't pick up liability for the lighting we put on there, but
Well, I'm
I-
just saying-
I
what I'm
could-
saying is, I would hate to have the liability if those lights are out and the barge ran into the bridge, that was the city's liability. I
No,
think
that
those
would
would
be-
be.
I don't
fair.
think
That
that,
would
I
be
think it's a
MoDOT's.
decorative lighting package. It sits over here. Then the actual bare minimum, I guess, or the minimum lighting package is over here, which is, I don't know for
Yeah,
sure,
maybe.
but I have to look into that.
That would be
The only thing that I've looked into is a decorative lighting package. And I just want everyone to understand that those are our lights as far as the city goes. And we're going to start thinking about that as this transitions over, that we need to make sure that we're prepared to, to handle any kind of hiccup.
Where's the control panel at?
I don't know if I want to say that right this second. I don't think, that's for us to know, it's utility-wise. Security. It is locked, but we're working through those details. The other thing with the bridge that, so scheduled 20-foot river gauge has been an issue. We're also working with Alberici on looking into the possibility of trying to speed up the trail reconstruction, and what does that look like. Currently, I know there's been some concern about when the trail reopens. I know
You're talking
council.
about the Riverfront Trail on our
Riverfront
side
Trail.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah, the Riverfront Trail, the original contract was completion in September. That was pushed out 30 days with the flood of 2015, from what I understand. Judy, I think, has said that, which puts you into October. This, I'm assuming that there's going to be another review of the actual schedule due to the river being up essentially through summertime now, most likely into winter. Obviously, you can't reconstruct this trail necessarily in the wintertime. I think a conservative estimate would be that trail would not be open until summer of 2020, honestly. And we want to make sure we do it right. So it allows us the capabilities to do everything correct.
John, is there still heavy traffic? I mean, the big trucks and stuff still running on that to clear out their
Yes.
area? So that's not even, it's still being utilized as a,
Well, as of today, no, because I think it's underwater.
but I'm
But yes, in the contract, in the easement agreement, Alberici and MoDOT have the ability to utilize the trail till the completion of the project. So that completion date dictates, the easement goes away once the project is completed.
that's part of the.
Problem is that schedule's moving because of the Missouri River, Missouri River Gate Heights, essentially. So they have to remove all the causeway rock out of the river. That process has not really started yet. So all the rock that was hauled in has to get hauled back out. So it is a moving target, but I thought it was important to let everyone know that the trail most likely will not be open until summer of 2020. And that's a pretty, I think we can meet that deadline, but it's going to be, we have to get with it this winter, for sure.
Very good.
So,
Thank
just
you,
an
John.
honest assessment, not necessarily a positive one, but
I think Judy probably has, there's probably some training that could go along with the lighting.
there is.
I mean, that's
It's
not
it's
a-
part of the bid
Right,
package.
okay.
So we also get the ability, because they'll be testing it, so we'll get the ability to stand at the riverfront, stand on the bridge, stand at various locations around town and see what it looks like, and then adjust it, tweak it a little bit. We get all that ability to do so once the lighting gets on the bridge and they start programming it. So I just wanted to bring it up, that this is kind of the next, big issue for us as far as the bridge.
Very good. Any other comments, questions? Hearing none? Corridor Committee, 47 Corridor Committee?
I was in attendance.
They had, Darren and I went to the meeting when we talked about the stakeholders and funding options. Tim is working very diligently to figure out some funding opportunities. And we commented similarly to St. Clair, that we felt that we would be more interested in contributing towards the funding when the road got closer this way. It would be difficult for us to commit funds right now when this could be 20, 30 years you know, it could be 20 years before it comes here. And St. Clair had first indicated that. But from what I read in the paper, Union, the county, and the Special Road District of Union are going to team together to secure, you know, to go after funding. And I don't know if that was your article or whatever. But anyway, so those are the three entities. And it's kind of sounded like Union might be taking a little bit of the lead there with getting grants and things like that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, I think MoDOT has recognized that they call it an independent utility, is just a term that's used in the funding world, I guess, that the area through Union, kind of city limits to city limits, can be utilized as an independent utility. So that section of 47 can be pulled out rather than the entire corridor. So they can move forward with doing their environmental, that type of stuff on their own, rather than have everybody in the corridor involved. And since that section is the most costly because it involves Burbus River, a potential bridge or a potential realignment, I mean, I don't want to say, commit to wherever that goes, that can be evaluated as a different item. And I think that is a big, is critical path, really.
Does the committee understand Washington and St. Clair's position?
Yes?
Well, not
They-
being involved in the initial project at 47 and 50. We're backing away from it.
Yes, the committee understands that, yes. I mean,
That's no problem.
no, I mean, it didn't seem to be a problem when we stated it, or whatever, when the comment was made, it was discussion.
And it was not,
It wasn't, and we were respectful about it. We just felt like that it would be difficult for us to, our half-cent transportation tax is extended all the way to 2030, and that funding is committed to paying off what we have here, with Highway 100.
Sandy, I don't think we're backing out 100%. We're just backing out the financial part of it
Right.
for a while.
Yeah.
That's the important, not back, backing out might be a little bit of a harsh, it's not that,
Okay.
we're just not taking the lead
Yeah, we're,
doing it.
So
We are
if they needed a letter from
backlogging.
us or something like that as a political subdivision endorsing it, we would still,
oh, yeah, we're still on the committee, we're still there, we're just not, we just backed away from saying, hey, we're going to come help you fund it. We're not, no, we're still on board with it, and John's been attending the transportation meeting, and Darren has continued to attend the Highway 47 committee meetings. So if I misspoke or used the wrong words, I'm sorry, but no, the meeting that we attended was to look for funding and to get commitments for funding. And,
And knowing the critical path is essentially the Union section,
right,
it was determined that the lead should be taken by the entity where that critical path item is. So obviously that path moves. You check one thing off the list, get through Union, you move on to the next one. Well, the next critical path item potentially could be Washington
Right.
Station or St. Clair's or the counties or whatever. It hasn't gotten that far yet. They're just trying to get over that first item,
'Cause you
which is
could-
the most expensive item.
you could expand from Washington to Union, but you'd still have a mess in Union.
Correct.
I mean, if you don't get that part fixed first, that has to be the number one area that needs to be improved. So we're
I
still
think the
funding.
only hope on funding is the federal government.
that's right.
And I did hear that, our project had been moved down to, like, it wasn't even on the illustrative, but now it's back, or they're going to move it, East-West Gateway, or they're going to do something. I heard some comment about that. I wasn't at the meeting, but that it is going to get back into the,
The list.
maybe the 15-year list or something, but it's going to get back on the list.
The discussion at a previous meeting was all about the environmental study.
Correct.
And the fact that they thought, or not they, but the outfit that did the study thought that the environmental study would have to go from one end of the thing to the other. And now that you have
That's,
localized it basically for just through the city of Union, or on the city of Union, I think would help in not having to spend the extra, whatever it was $1 million.
Oh, it's
or $2
huge.
million.
and that's, that's the
It'd be down
biggest.
to maybe 100,000 or 200,000.
Right, and that's the biggest concern was that if Washington if all the entities get involved
Do the whole
and have an
environmental-
environmental study from point A, being Washington, to point B, St. Clair, that if you do the study now and you spend, I don't know the dollar number, but you spend quite a bit of money, that it gets put on a shelf. And the concern is then 10 years down the road, pick a number, when it gets actually built, that area, that shelved study may not be applicable in the future. So why not break the middle portion out, which is the most, is the critical path item? It's the highest dollar amount. It's the most environmentally, it's the area that has to be studied the most because of the Burbus River and the physical relocation of the road. That let's hone in on that and get that portion taken care of so the study can be utilized and not have the potential to lose some of those dollars, to waste, I mean, not waste, but to take the shelf study and it not be applicable in the future. That was the position that was taken essentially by us and St. Clair, is identifying a critical path through Union. You have to get that sorted out first. And then as the project progresses, then the other entities can come in and reassess it in the future.
Probably
And that's the independent utility concept.
Could be looked at as a positive.
Correct.
Well, you have to look at it.
And Washington's corridor, potentially St. Clair's, the actual corridor when it gets widened, is essentially in the same center line. So the environmental impacts are much less.
Right.
So it may have a different kind of level of the environmental review as well. So by breaking it out, it's
And there was some
actually
of that
better.
done when Judy did the improvements that are there now that were just
Correct.
done several years ago. There had to be an environmental, of some sort, maybe not at the level that would have to be to replace the bridge, but there had to be an environmental for what was done. Widening done. That was done there, 4 or 5 years ago?
Correct. You could maybe
That
utilize.
maintained the same alignment, had very little new right-of-way.
And that's
And I
correct.
believe at the last meeting, we were saying that the crossing of the rivers was going to be 2/3 to 3/4 of the
That's
cost of
exactly
the
right.
EIA.
Exactly right.
Yes,
So we're dropping a real small portion of it by dropping off St. Clair and Washington out of the picture.
right.
And I'd hate to drop off the pull that all of our
I-
gross product might bring to it. Now, St. Clair's isn't big, but
It's a good point. It's a good point. I think John's going to be involved with it probably continuously.
As a
Andy,
group,
be
we
involved
are.
with
Yeah, Darren is
And Darren.
continuing to be
Yeah.
involved with it.
I would get more involved, but I don't think I should. I want to be involved to let them know that we're interested, but
Yeah, I mean, they
Washington's
know
input
what
necessarily,
we're interested.
you're good.
I mean-
That's
I
fine.
mean,
That's fine.
it's,
Like I said, it's just, all that it's done is
Yeah.
delayed our input a little longer until the most important piece of the puzzle can make a decision on
And
how
there's
they
other-
want to move
And
forward.
there's other improvements that can be done on the section
Well,
between
that's, yeah,
Washington and Union.
absolutely.
To do improvements that could very possibly be put into the scheduling now.
correct. Well, here's the other thing too, is Washington, we cannot even apply for STP funding outside of our city limits. So if we were to apply for an 80/20, the leverage 80/20, which is what we do here in town on some of our streets, we can't do that at Clearview Road or at, it's not even in our jurisdiction. That's a Franklin County concern. Now, we can submit letters of support and all those type of things and say how it ties into our Highway 47 overall concept, and kind of break the bigger project down into smaller ones, which is what the strategy, I think, was with MoDOT a little bit. But we can't internally apply for those jobs because they're not, or those projects, because they're not within our jurisdiction.
But the city of Union can apply for those projects,
And Franklin County
and
can.
Franklin County can, because it's right in their
Correct.
jurisdiction, and they can get the 80/20 match
Yep,
and secure the grants, and that's the path that they're hoping to go down.
Pay 100%.
yeah.
Does the Union piece go from Union city limits to Union city limits?
Yeah, I mean, it would be no
Or is just right
different.
at the bridge?
It would be from Union city limits to Union city limits would be that environmental assessment.
So what they do really isn't going to possibly affect where 47 meets it. In other words, could 47 move north of Union in any way as a result of what they do?
It most definitely could. There are 3 options on the table where it goes. And that's a decision that Union has to make, not necessarily, Union and MoDOT would have to make, not a decision that obviously we would be somewhat involved in. But there are three options on the table of where do you, obviously you have 47 north, 47 south, there's the jog, that's the issue there. Where does that meet up so that jog is removed? Does it stay in the current alignment as you work your way to the south, where the, the alignment where it is now, and go up the hill, where you see the hillside? Or does it move, do you realign it to the east, to line up with the area next to the Quick Trip and all that? What does that look like? And an environmental assessment is going to point to which direction it should go, and that's what the environmental assessment does. So it's not necessarily where do they want it. It also has this environmental component of where is it in the most environmentally friendly to go. Right. And that's what Judy's been hitting on is, obviously there's concerns about where it gets realigned to, but the environmental concern is a pretty large portion of that decision-making process. And that is, since it hasn't been done, I don't think anyone could be sure of where it goes. Does that answer?
Yes.
It's a long answer, but.
Well, I think so. I was just thinking that what they do then could very well affect what we would later do.
It could.
Because the meeting point could be different.
The tie-in locations are essentially in the same locations. Now, does that move, a quarter mile, half mile to the north on the actual tie-ins, the center line? Yeah, the potential's there. But essentially, everything that we've seen is the center line from Union to Washington is essentially in the same place. You just widen it, no different than you did with 100.
Well, it can't be the same. You said both things. It can't be the same place if it's going to be a half mile further east, for example.
Well, one of
No.
the options is like at Independence Drive. Isn't there one that?
Yeah, that's what, let me.
So the tie-ins could move
The
north and
tie-ins
south
could
from
move
Union
just-
somewhat, depending on how big the loop is that goes around. And at one point, you throw in extra bridges, and I think it's also important, and I'm pretty sure this is true, when we're calling it environmental assessment, but it's also costs and everything else and operations and maintenance. It's not just whether we have some bugs out there we gotta protect. It's the whole picture of who gets impacted by this. So some of it, we may be able to go straight across, as he said, the drive that comes past Quick Trip, keep that location and go out there in that floodplain, and then we may tie in further toward Washington than we would right at Main Street in Union. But essentially, I think any option is open to the study right now, right? Or have we identified a list of options with that first study that we did?
There are essentially three options getting through Union that are in the plan.
And do
I
all
can-
of them tie into the old route within the city limits of Union? Because the city limits of Union gets pretty big,
Yeah,
north and south.
I'm going off memory here. It's been a while since I've seen them, but it is within, pick a
Yes,
half
we
mile
know
of those same
much.
locations. I don't know the exact details. It's not at the exact spot. So right now, you're tying in at, one of the options was as you work towards the south on Highway 47 by the McDonald's, Jimmy John's, all that Walgreens area, is to continue to the south. Just go to
straight
St. Clair,
across.
just cut straight across. That's one option. Option number two may be, not two in the sense of it's a way they're going to go, just option number two is that as you work your way north by the Quick Trip, go through the floodplain and go straight at 47 and tie back in. Where does that tie-in happen? It's not going to be a half mile to the east in the sense of that the whole road shifts over. It may move, a half mile to the north where the tie-in is. So as you go into Dawson's Quarry, for example, at that location, Clearview Road, I would anticipate that Highway 47 would be tied back in the center line at that location. And then as you work towards Washington, it would be widened in the existing corridor. Where does that happen? It'll move depending on environmental issues, railroad, floodplain.
Well, the railroad is a big factor.
Majority of things.
In it as well. When you stay straight and go across Highway 50 towards St. Clair, now you deal with the railroad bridge.
I guess my unstated point is that if you're going to move the tie-in point, you affect the later environmental study of us coming from Washington to that point, because there could be different environmental factors.
Could shift.
Further north or probably further north of where it is today, right?
No, that's a good point, and I'll say that I haven't necessarily looked into it that far. I can't answer that right here today, but yeah, that's a very good point, is what from station X to station Y, what's the environmental scope, essentially? And I think that's what they're working towards, is trying to figure out what is that scope. They do not know that yet. And that does affect everything in the future, correct. I'm just saying between Washington and Union, or between that tie-in point, the environmental concerns theoretically should go down because there's no essentially big rivers or things of that nature that you have to cross. The bulk of the study is at 50 and 47. Yeah.
You know, looking long range, there's justification to fix 47 because it's a vital link between Interstate 70 and Interstate 44. This would take traffic off of 270. Now, they've been talking about that for 30 years at least, but
I can remember.
nothing's happened.
I've seen the lines drawn on the map.
Except the bridge here, that's
Yeah,
happened.
the bridge here stopped it all because they didn't know where the new bridge was gonna go, because that would determine that route, north to south. And till our bridge was done, that whole study was shelved, and I gave that study to Joe, just because it affects him now more on his side of the river, more likely than it does on this side at this point, so.
And it makes even more sense than it did back when those maps were originally drawn. I mean, you got
Sure.
Warren County growing from the east, and it gives them all an option. You've got growth coming out Highway 44 into Franklin County from the east as well. So it seems like all of the old thoughts that it's gonna be needed should be pretty obvious right now for that whole corridor.
If you remember when they chose the location of the new bridge, that was the study, and it showed going to the west, going to the east. And that, they had to have three alternatives: stay where you're at, or one way or the other. And so those were looped. I mean, you couldn't do anything with 47, basically, until the bridge was defined what was gonna happen there. But it took, 10, 15 years to get the bridge decided it was gonna be where it's at, then to get it designed, and then get it built, and then get it finished. You've got the 15 years. And so that's why I'm thinking this could be the outfit that did the study for Union, what was the name of the outfit?
Lockmuir Group.
Lockmiller. Lockmiller did
For
a
the
lot
county.
more environmental than we've ever seen in any study that I've ever looked at for our preliminaries. And they looked at some of this environmental stuff already and gave the group suggestions on what would be, from their estimation, more positive. And that's why they chose the one side they did, or whichever direction they did. Least environmental impact.
And I know I've said this at the last meeting, and I apologize, I did not get that out to the group. Let me send the actual study out to everybody so you can see where those locations are with the maps. And that way you all can try to, I know I'm doing a pretty terrible job explaining it, but we can at least see where those, kind of the scoring mechanism that they used to come up with 1, 2, and 3 options.
That would help.
Yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
and done. And Lockmiller
And I
did a
should have
good
had that
job.
done.
Normally, you don't get that from just a study, but Lockmiller did a great job
They did a great job on
of
the
explaining
study.
it, of doing that. That was far and beyond what they could have
And
done.
your biggest issues, again, is the Burbus River,
Yeah.
number one, the railroad, which I'm not familiar with which railroad runs that route.
Rock Island,
Um,
no, not Rock Island.
I don't think,
Is it Burlington? Is it Burlington?
I don't think it's Burlington either. But anyway, those are the kind of the two biggest hurdles, and your environmental concerns, which is the river. So, but let me get that to you. We'll try to have that by the end of the day.
You know, just an item, if that railroad bridge could be isolated, and then we could prove that there's a lot of freight traffic on that section, we could then hopefully maybe apply for a grant from the Freightways initiative. There's money being spent on freight bridges, whatever, to make freight.
We have suggested to essentially Union and the committee that, there could be some potential for floodplain mitigation dollars that you could leverage to kind of move things. So
And again, that's
thinking of the
that's
same
in
way
city
outside the
limits of
box.
Union, or Union and Franklin County. So the three groups, the right people are initiating it, so. Anything else? Next one is the Franklin County Transportation Committee.
It's kind of the
It's all
same,
tied to-
same things discussed. The only thing I would add is our local, here's one of the items that they're looking at is we get our local grants that we essentially apply for to do maintenance projects within the city. Historically, we've utilized those to offset our matches for our federal grants. So our 80/20 grants, we would utilize Franklin County grant dollars to offset our local match, which somewhat makes sense. One of the things potentially that could be looked at is maybe doing away with that for a time being to help offset this 47
good.
corridor. So essentially, the 50,000, 60,000 that the city would get that we historically have received every single year, we would forego that option to have Franklin County spend the money to assist with 47. That's one idea. We did that with the lighting on the bridge, if you
Exactly.
recall, 2012. Is all the entities came together within Franklin County, every single, New Haven,
For 1 year.
yep, for 1 year, essentially said, we are not going to go after this $250,000 that are typically available every year. We're going to allow it to go towards the bridge to offset some of the cost to get the bridge done. So we could do that over a period of time. But again, I think the individuals that lead that or put that forth to the committee would be Franklin County.
Right.
And then we essentially all vote for it in that committee. So that's been discussed.
Yeah. How much was the amount that is being divided, like this year?
It ranges.
Grown, I don't know how it's grown or.
250 to 300,000.
It's 300, okay.
The past couple years, everyone's kind of come to an agreement that everyone who submits an application in, if the project meets a certain scoring criteria, that they split the money up equally, that everyone's project is essentially valuable within the county. So let's just say Washington would put in for $120,000, which we've done that before. The group has voted on that. It caps out at 60. So Washington would get 60, maybe New Haven would have a project that's 60, they would get 60. Maybe Pacific would only have a project that's, 40, they would only get 40 because they didn't apply that exceeded 60. So it's kind of been a spread the money out a little bit. Apply for a project, spread the money out, especially if they're sidewalk projects, kind of more maintenance type projects that doesn't affect the region as a whole. Let's spread it out a little bit. That's kind of been the consensus as the group over the past couple years.
And the Transportation Committee actually makes the decisions on what projects are being chosen?
That is a fact.
Okay. That's
Yes,
what the
it's
Franklin
voted on
County
as a
Transportation
group.
Committee is their position, that's their job.
Correct.
Okay,
For Washington,
That's what I
I'm a
remember.
voting member in that for Washington.
right.
So,
Got it. Anything else? That's the big items. Joe, anything from Warren County?
River's going down a little bit, it's coming back up, Wednesday, Thursday. Most of the roads are open, not, the bottom road is not open yet, well, unless it opened up this morning.
Yeah.
But 94 is open over the weekend, but I think it's the 29 again, it's gonna close again.
And you're hearing about all the lakes and stuff, that
The last report I got from the Corps, we're gonna be around the 25-foot range for a while. It may go down 21, 22, but it's gonna jump right back up.
yeah.
Between Gavin's Point, Truman, the lake. I think Truman was at like 32 feet, there's telephone poles in the water. And that's just hard to imagine,
Yeah.
They had a road, they showed a picture of it, telephone poles everywhere. And that's just hard to imagine that much water.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none. Airport, John?
Airport, the biggest thing we have going is the striping project, which we're still waiting on getting a schedule, getting a pre-construction meeting scheduled with MoDOT, everyone else. As soon as I get that, we will be making personal phone calls, going through our process, so. I think the biggest thing there is, and I did brief city council on this last week, was we did request a significant amount of documentation as far as the quality of work that the contractor does, because I'm not familiar with them. And MoDOT has been involved in a couple of the projects they've done within the state over the past couple of years. Obviously, the obvious thing here is to stay out of the situation we were in with the last project.
Any comments or questions? Hearing none. Moving on. Team Track. Team Track, anything?
No report other than something that leads into the team track. We did apply for an East-West Gateway grant to pave Westlink. This kind of plays into the team track just with the whole area. Preliminary staff at East West Gateway has approved that project, along with approving Jefferson Street in the same year. That's the first time we've applied for 2 and received 2, which is 4 years out. But that does kind of play into the team track that we're taking care of our industrial park and making sure that utility gets utilized as much as possible. That would include a improvement to the intersection at Bluff and Westlink with that goofy kind of turn right there. We're going to look at putting a turn lane in and trying to clean that up a little bit.
Yeah.
So just, I know that's not specifically the team track, but it all plays into that, so.
East-West Parkway.
East-West Parkway, there is, I don't know, anybody see any there's some grading action going on the east side. This isn't really East-West Parkway, but the High Street extension, that is for a kind of a memory loss center, maybe. It's got an I-3, which is an institutionalized building code, essentially. So kind of going in the middle of that lot. So if you're out there, you see some of that grading going on. That's what's going on. There's some utility work that may have to be done on High Street right there. So I'm trying to evaluate the best way to do that. Apparently, there was not some utilities that were crossing the street in place. So we could potentially see a saw cutting of the pavement and some removing and then some work putting back in, which is an issue that I'll be working with, trying to come up with the best way to limit saw cutting of the street. So.
And you've got another industry, not an industry, but you've got another building going up on the west side.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, the west side it's the west side of High Street, south side of Don Avenue. That is a CrossFit center. So if anyone's into flipping tractor tires over, they can sign up for that. But it's a CrossFit center. So
Is there an expansion going on for the housing complex, like the one that's down over the hill?
yes.
Is that going to be expanded? Is that?
Yeah, so I want to say about a year ago, I think they went to city council and asked for a letter of support to try to go for those tax credits. I could be wrong. I'm going off
They
memory.
did received the tax credits, and the project's going to go on, but it's going to be like another year.
There you go.
Okay. And where's that going to go? Directly across?
Directly to the south. They own the
They're
lot
gonna go
directly
to
to
the
the,
south.
so, yeah, towards the dead end, essentially.
Yeah, towards the.
So what I would anticipate then is High Street will get extended another, pick a number, 500
Whatever it
feet.
takes.
I don't know, whatever it takes to get there. So
It's going to get closer
it's
to that east-west park.
going to get
that's
piecemealed until there's a
And then-
solution.
Somewhat.
Now we've,
It's coming. Just another time.
Yeah, just take time.
yeah. Historically, the city does not build streets. Developers build them, we take them over for maintenance. So until, there's a change in that kind of concept, we'll continue to look at all options. But there's really no grant dollars available, so it would have to be done with local money, and it's not historically what we've done.
John, just a thought. When you're in talks about the 5047 intersection, start talking about the
Yeah.
east-west parkway.
Oh, yeah.
And where that would hit.
It's-
Okay?
Yeah.
At some point, maybe there's, I don't know.
Duly noted.
Huh?
Duly noted.
Got it.
We've
Okay.
been,
Got it. Public transportation, Corey, I see you're here. Hey, nothing really, nothing new? Nothing changes?
I like Corey.
You guys get funding through MoDOT, correct, for the buses?
heat me. Like Corey, heat me.
Oh, good, good. Any questions for Corey? Other business?
Two things, real quick. We are evaluating, looking into modifying potential city code regarding street excavation permits. So when you put a utility cut in the street, and I know this has been kind of a hot topic in the past, it's your responsibility as the contractor, homeowner, whatever, permit holder, to backfill the trench and then maintain that trench until the city can come in and do the final patching with asphalt. The reason why we do that is then we can control the patching to make sure that they're in somewhat of a, we do the best we can, in a smooth or an easily drivable condition. We went to that years ago. There was the problem with that is there's always a lag time between when the rock trench gets filled and when the city comes in and patches it. So there's always this little gap there. What I've seen is the contracting community is not keeping up on maintaining that trench, and quite frankly, it's causing me a lot of frustration and a lot of looking into if somebody gets a flat tire, for example. There's a lot of explanation. So I'm going to look at going into the last piece of that process is to put cold patch down, patch asphalt. Now, that's an added cost, but what it does is it buys us, as the city, the time to repair that with a hot mix final repair. So I'm going to look into that, see what that looks like, and present that to city council. Maybe at next Monday's meeting, but maybe the meeting after. So I just want to bring this, the goal here being is that we keep care of our non-major streets much better.
Is coal patch harder for the city to remove?
No,
or
it's
do you
easy,
go
it's
right over
easy.
the top of it?
What it does is it seals, rock doesn't spew out all over the
Keeps the
street.
rain from going and washing
exactly
all
right.
the way.
Best thing to settle out a trench is just time, water and time. So we can compact as much as we can, but
So
we
the
like to
city
let 'em
grinds it out anyway.
We do. So we're going to look into that. The other thing which you'll notice is, and I sent an email out to city council last week, we are going to go into a maintenance idea of this, like a chip and seal on some very small areas. So Jefferson Street, if you drive Jefferson from 5th Street to 47, let's make sure we get this right. From 5th Street to 47, there's some alligators, some major cracked up areas. Rather than go in and mill those out and put a hot asphalt back in order to get to an end point. So Jefferson's, we just received a grant, 1.2 million-ish. I don't feel it's in the best interest to go through and mill and patch and do everything when I'm going to tear it all back out in 2 or 3 years anyway. So what I've asked the street department to do in very, very small areas, and drive it, you'll see it. You're talking areas 3 and 4 foot sizes, is to put some oil down and some chip and seal and then brush all that off. So what you'll see is some very small maintenance ideas going on to try to get to that point to where the street gets reconstructed in 3 or 4 years anyway.
Good plan.
So we are not chipping sealing streets. We're using every tool in our maintenance toolbox to get to that point. If Jefferson Street wasn't getting a grant, an 80-20 grant in the next 2 to 3 years, we would be milling it out and replacing it. But since there's dollars at 20 cents on the dollar locally, we felt that might be a good tool to use. Is that good? Greg, got that? We're not chipping sealing streets.
Good plan.
Not.
Good plan. I have one other thing that I think we should continue to keep talking about, and I know, I'm talking about annexation, and I'm talking not anything other than voluntary annexation, and annexation of the Highway 100. I know we can do it
Old Highway 100?
if we can get
The new.
the new Highway 100.
Okay.
So we can open up either both directions. It's a possibility, I think, annexing the highway only.
No.
And then, it's being done in other communities, I know it has. And so,
MoDOT's, I can speak to that. MoDOT's policy.
Good.
And I'm not aware that it's a state statute or it's a MoDOT policy, is that they will allow you to annex the corridor, the right-of-way, provided that you have property owners on both sides to sign off on that.
see, it's not, I
That's
don't know
what-
why that would be a problem. I think that just would have to be, I think it could be done. I think you gotta have to talk to the property owners. There aren't that many of them. And just, at one time, the property owners initiated a voluntary annexation and the city turned it down or something. Some years ago, like 600 acres to the east.
Remember?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any
Was it
difference,
was it continue?
What's that?
whatever it was, whatever.
Yeah,
it
I don't
was.
know. I don't recall
It wasn't
that.
passed, it wasn't passed. The whole point is, what happens if in fact we could annex
Well-
the highway, get the people to agree to it?
What
can we do then with it?
What it does
when
is-
Joins it.
You cannot annex into the city unless you're a contiguous part of the city.
Understand?
So if the corridor was annexed even to a certain station, to a certain location, it does free up then the ability then for that property owner to annex into the city. So there is a positive there. Is that,
You mean spot, or?
yeah, so,
anywhere
so,
along it, not
so you
necessarily
can't,
contingent,
for example,
is it?
if the corridor is not let's just say, let's go 2 miles, east
Yes.
towards 44.
Whatever.
And if somebody wanted to annex into the city, they could not do so today because it's not contiguous
That's correct.
to the city. If the corridor was annexed to that spot, they would be contiguous to the city, so they could.
They could.
If they wanted to. Now, I don't know if that would ever happen, or we're not talking about that. We don't have, we don't have the utilities out that direct, there's a lot of things. The other thing is, utility-wise, the water and sewer district out there, we only go to a certain spot. There's a line essentially drawn in the sand. Now, Darren and I are working with the sewer district to see what it would take, maybe to discuss that. Is that where that line is? I don't know. I have not looked into it that far. But that would be then, once the corridor's annexed, the next critical path item is utilities, and as that kind of moves. So, I don't know if that's a positive, I don't know if that's a negative, I'm just saying that that's the
Anytime
ability.
you can add to a potential expansion of the city limits in a master plan,
Yeah,
why wouldn't you do it? Even if you have to get certain approvals. But if you can get the property owners, they don't have to annex their land. They don't have to do anything with their land. All they gotta do is
The right of way.
say that, yes, we're not against it. And all of a sudden now you've annexed,
but you have the potential to annex
potential to annex.
voluntarily.
And you got the school district coming in there too now, and sewer, you may have to do some upgrading of that, signal on Highway 100. Now, if you got buses coming through there all day long, you may have to have a signalized intersection.
That's a MoDOT policy as well. So you also have Old Highway 100, which is not MoDOT controlled.
You're closer to the MoDOT portion of it. Just if you could get questions answered about what are the possibilities, what have other communities done?
We've done it.
If
We've
I had
actually,
Judy here, she could probably tell us.
we actually just did it, the same thing with, as if you notice the city limit sign as you come in 100 westbound,
Yeah.
it actually was moved to just past End Sports, 18 months ago.
Yeah.
It used to be, I think Jim Craft Accessory Unlimited, that little complex there, it used to be sit right there, the city limit sign was. It actually just got moved to the east using MoDOT's policy. We got all the property owners along there, which was I think, is it the Presbyterian Church? I don't know what church that is, but that church, Craft property, whatever, that was then, the city limit sign was expanded by annexing the right-of-way using MoDOT's policy. It just was done. And it's not a difficult thing to do. It's just you got to get property owners to sign off on all that. And that becomes a, educational item for sure.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay.
So we can, Darren and I will discuss, Sal, for sure.
Bill, does anybody know anything about Judy Wagner's replacement?
No, there were a couple of new people at the meetings in Union when we were at the Highway 47 meetings. I don't know if any of those are being considered, but
Sal and I think we have a meeting with Judy
I have not heard anything.
within the next couple of weeks, and that was one of the items we were going to discuss. Sal was setting that meeting up.
Going to Arnold. Any
You
other
talked
questions?
like they were going to put the position out
Yeah. Among the,
for qualifications like this month or?
I think it was this month. I think they wanted like a 1 to 2 month overlap
Right.
that the new individual would shadow or not.
But they don't have anybody now, I don't think.
They do not. The only thing I can say is that MoDOT is seemingly, and I've been told this, short-staffed,
yeah.
that they're having difficulty filling any positions, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And it does slow things down, and I have no problem saying that. It does slow down projects pretty significantly at times. So our money goes through them, comes back through them, so
Kind of like the airport layout plan, Bill.
Anyway, the numbers, as far as the sales tax, half-cent sales tax, transportation sales tax,
long time.
very similar
Thank
to
you.
last year's, down just a
I'm
half,
reasonable.
3/4 of a fraction. It's all, looks like it's about the same, not changing much.
It is.
And that's fine. I mean, it generates more than $2 million a year, the half-cent transportation sales tax. What would we have done without that? Who knows?
Look what
Anyway.
we've all have accomplished, though, with the highway and all of our city streets.
Any other things you want to bring up? Questions, problems, ideas? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Go home.
Oh, aye.
Oh, I can't help.
Yeah.
Well, let's go talk. I don't know. the details.
She's going to become something with this Arnold.
Oh, it's okay.
Actually leaving MoDOT. Oh, yeah, she's leaving MoDOT. I'll be darned. She's probably got enough years in it. She's been out, she's